Meet John. He's been laboring as a pastor for almost 7 years. He's worked at a couple different churches, but has run into the same roadblocks at both. He's starting to recognize that he needs to make some shifts in the way he operates as a pastor. He wants to lead and serve with more intentionality. Well, here are 10 shifts that John can make, and you can make, to become a more intentional pastor and flourish in life and leadership. The first shift that you and John can make is going from controlling to coaching. Whether you have paid staff or you're strictly leading volunteers, things begin to change dramatically when you start to let go of control. But you got to do this right. Think about it. What do great coaches do? They make clear expectations for their team, and then they coach them toward the win. A controlling leader is just a scared leader, but a leader who coaches is a leader who empowers more to be accomplished. The second shift that you and John can make to become a more intentional pastor is to go from a visionary to a collaborator. If you're the lead pastor, there's a sense of you being the person that needs to point the team in the direction that you sense God leading the church. However, I think this is accomplished far better when you include others in the process. When your team can weigh in, they'll have greater buy-in because it's not all up to you. And that's really great news because you weren't meant to carry that weight. So let others in on the process. The third shift that you can make is going from a people pleaser to a leader of people. This is so important. Let's face it. It's far more pleasant when everyone lives in harmony, right? But here's the kicker. That's a fantasy. When people are involved, things tend to get messy. And as a pastor, there will be times when you have to have a tough conversation. That's what a leader does. Remember, if Moses let the people have what they wanted, they would be still dancing around a golden calf on their way back to slavery. See, God called you to faithfully serve and lead people. You take your direction from him alongside of your team, and you lead people with your team toward him. If you want to be a people pleaser, do something else, but don't do anything that has to do with leadership. I beg you. The fourth thing is to go from doing it all to using your gifts. Whether you have a paid staff serving alongside you or not, doing it all is not a good strategy. In fact, it's a simple recipe for ineffectiveness and eventually burnout. The beautiful biblical picture of the church is a body with many parts. You know this, working in concert to move as Christ commands. So maybe you're a gifted teacher, an encourager, but you don't possess any kind of gift in administration or organization. Like, friend, you shouldn't be planning the next outreach event in your town, right? Like, the Lord has provided your church the people and the gifts that she needs to be healthy. You may just need to let go of your pride and start empowering others while leveraging your own gifts. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But more than that, I've got a gift for you as my way of saying thanks for being on this video. It's going to help you take this idea of becoming a more intentional pastor to the next level. It's called my Intentional Pastor's Roadmap. If you want to get on the path to leading your church in a more intentional way, then this is the resource you need. Just go to preachandlead.com/roadmap, and I will hook you up with that free download so that you can get on a better path to leading your church more intentionally. Again, go to preachandlead.com/roadmap and get your free guide today. The fifth shift is that you go from periodic prayer to practicing the presence of God. Maybe you grew up with the idea of a quiet time with the Lord instilled in you, and that's great. But one thing many of us miss is the beautiful reality that the Spirit of God is indwelling us at all times. So practicing the presence of God, both remaining aware that the Lord is with you and working alongside him in all things, that's going to help you increase your faith, increase your trust, and decrease your anxiety. See, we weren't meant to follow Jesus alone. That's true in our horizontal relationships with people, but that's also true in our vertical relationship with the Spirit of God. He's with us as we follow Christ and glorify the Father. The sixth shift that intentional pastors make is going from anxious to calm, aware, and present. See, what John is discovering and what you are either abundantly aware of or need to become aware of is that pastoring brings a lot of internal battles. The combination of spiritual warfare and leading people can create a stew of anxiety. Often the emotional tools needed to lead well aren't acquired outside of leading people. So it's like a learn as you go endeavor. Case in point, reading The Pastor by Eugene Peterson Bible College didn't have as much of an effect on me as it is reading it today, 12 years into pastoral ministry. One person that's been instrumental in helping me in this area is Steve Cuss and his Capable Life membership program, as well as his book, Managing Leadership Anxiety. Because leading with a high level of anxiety isn't ideal, but leading as a calm, aware, and present person is not only more effective, it's really more joyful. The seventh shift that intentional pastors make is going from cynicism and despair to ChristCentered realism and hope. See, if you lead long enough, eventually you're going to hit a wall, and it's at that point that the drift towards cynicism and despair can increase. As a pastor who's leading real people, you'll get hurt. You'll see people you invested your heart in leave. And many times, sometimes, like, not even telling you that they left, right? They'll just disappear. You'll see self-professing Christians be used as instruments of the devil, and that kind of thing can make cynicism an easy default. And if you stay cynical long enough, eventually you'll fall into despair. You'll see the future containing no possibility for better days. And when you're cynical and despairing, watch out, because you're going to be a prime candidate for Satan to take out. Instead, shift to Christ-centered realism and hope. Like, be a realist, but, people struggle with sin, right? But you also know that the power of God is here, right? And you have hope. That's why we have hope. So don't close your eyes and just wish for things to change. Open your eyes and see what God is doing in your midst. The 8th shift that intentional pastors make is going from living Sunday to Sunday to strategizing 3 to 5 years out. See, week to week isn't a strategy. It's not even maintenance, because even that requires some forward thinking. Maintenance does. Intentional pastors don't merely look at their week. They ask God for direction over longer stretches of time. They know that God wants to build his kingdom both now and into the future so that generations upon generations will know him. Think about this. What challenges are you facing today because the leaders 20 years earlier didn't think ahead enough? Don't do that to the future people who are going to come after you. The 9th shift that intentional pastors make is going from new and shiny to patient and purposeful. So, do you want to see a church that does a good burnout but doesn't move anywhere? Well, it's a church led by leaders who have shiny object syndrome toward programs and ministry methodologies. Let's see if this sounds familiar, just in regards to adult education. This year, they're all about deep theology classes. Last year, they were all about small groups. And the year before that, they were raving about rooted classes. And what resulted? Well, 3 years of activity, promotion, and implementation with not much to show for it. With each new thing, their congregation's buy-in decreased because they started to see that, this won't last. And they didn't give any of the methods enough time to see much fruit. See, intentional pastors shift to patient and purposeful. They decide on a model and move forward, realizing that ministry is a marathon. They're willing to make changes for sure, but they're also, they realize that meaningful things take time to build and to implement. The 10th shift that intentional pastors make is going from burning out to pursuing health. Intentional pastors aren't merely intentional about their vocation, but they are intentional about their relationships, their inner worlds, their bodies, their minds. Like, here's what John began to discover as he made this shift. When he's holistically healthy, he's a better husband, father, friend, and pastor. So I'm curious, what changes do you need to make in order to pursue holistic health in your life? Because you can make the shifts. You can decide today to begin intentionally making the shifts that you need to take. It all begins with a choice. So what choice will you make?